I want to tell you that we are making recording a video. So if you do not want, if you do not like your image being used for records, please turn off your camera. This video will be made public. So if you want to speak and do not want you say being published in the video, ask to speak off the record anytime when you do not want your say to be part of the videotape. In this way, your part will be cut out of the video during editing. Okay? Thank you. Now I would like to invite you to do a brief prayer. And at the end of the prayer, I invite you all to remain in silent receptivity, if you agree. Thank you. Dear Lord, our Heavenly Father, thank you for this meeting here and for your divine love that always sustains us. Dear Lord, help us to live in the Jesus love every day of our life and to love our brethren as you love us. Help us to know your truth and to be guided in spirit and to be better know how to serve and minister our fellows. Thank you, Father, for your guide and presence within ourselves and for your truth revealed to us. Amen. Amen. I want to say some words about these workshops, what we want to do. Our goal in this workshop series is to give an overview about Urantia Book teachings and to study the guiding principles that allows us to fulfill Jesus and the revelation instructions on how to serve the revelation, and to understand which aspects of the Urantia Book teachings are related to the mandate structures. Also, during this workshop series, we will study the Urantia Book teachings about the integration of our spiritual and intellectual development through human progress, improving our learning to doing and living the teachings. Living Jesus and the Revelator teachings about an unfailing, loving, and effective service to all humanity, the methods of the religion of the Spirit as portrayed in the Urantia Book. So in this way, we can approach to understand what means true leadership and teaching of the religion of Jesus. In these workshops, we want to address to every student who wants to use this opportunity to better understand these aspects of the mandate and its related Urantia Book teachings. So thank you very much for your presence. We hope that you enjoy this study, and we want also to invite every one of you to participate in these workshops, presenting teachings and asking questions or simply sharing your thoughts. Thank you very much. Today we have the participation of our friend Gaetan from Canada. He will present some teachings about the publication mandate and Jesus teachings. Thank you, Gaetan, for your work, your presence, and your love.
Thank you, Jeannie. Okay, so I guess you want me to take over now? I was first to, I guess, to start those workshops. So like I would say, like Jeannie said, forgive me, say sometimes there's some mishap. This is a first for me to give a workshop. Well, I did some seminar on Zoom, but it's the first time I do a workshop on Zoom. So before we begin, there is at the bottom of your screen a place where it says chat. But I will share with you a link, two links in fact. One link would be for a video that's stored on Vimeo that I took a few years ago of Carolyn Kendall in Chicago to validate the authenticity of the publication mandate, which I will present to you in this workshop. The second link will be a link to a Dropbox folder on my computer, but it's also online, it's in the cloud, where you will have access to the document that I'm using for this session. Now, the presentation of this workshop will be given in two different sessions, this coming day, which is this Saturday, and next Saturday. So in the first section, the first session of the workshop, we'll explore two things. We will explore the publication mandate and some quotes, and I will require of you to give some comments about what certain of those quotes means to you, what they appeal to you. And the second part of that, the first session, we will explore one chapter of the Urantia book, which is chapter 4 of paper 140, which is about the sermon on the mountain given by Jesus to his apostle, but not the exact sermon. What the Midway creature, whoever wrote the document, I think it was a Midway, that gave on chapter 4 some thought about what Jesus meant in his speech to his own apostle and some directive about how to be. Now, for me, as an introduction to this workshop, it is important that what we teach is what we are. In fact, we should be what we teach. You know, trying to teach what you are not sounds a little bit like an empty symbol or like an hypocrite. You know, we sound like being an hypocrite. We tell people to do things while we do something else. So in order to become a better teacher, we need to integrate, in fact, the teaching of the Urantia book. So I'm going to share with you a document, and I will require maybe from one of you to read chapter 4. So I'm going to share my first document. So my screen will be shared with you. So I wrote as the first session, the introduction, as you can you all see the screen now? I think so. So to become effective, spiritual, and true teacher, we must first embody the teaching we intend to teach. By our loyalty to those teachings, we will certainly become better teachers and leaders and become day by day the living example of Jesus' teaching. To help those that have a sincere desire to become those teachers, there were some basic directives given to the late member of the forum to be passed down to further generation. We find those directives in a document called the Publication Mandate, better known as the Timing of the Urantia book. Considering that some reader might doubt the validity and authenticity of this document, I am making available a link to an interview or a video recorded with Carolyn Kendall that was present at the time when it was first read to the late forum member, which they called the Group of the 70. And that was in 1955. In fact, the document was read twice during a different period in 1955, and it was passed down afterwards to the leader of the Urantia movement, which were the late Brotherhood, and it was read at every meeting they had. And probably this is where we got this idea to create, to train leaders and teachers. Now, this link there that I have here, I'm going to be sharing it with you in the chat room there. If you look at the bottom of your screen there, there's a chat space. And at the end of this presentation, I will share those two links. So before we leave the presentation, if you want to have access to those links to the video and to the document, just go to the chat room and copy and paste those links to a Word document or to a notepad or whatever where you want. And once you will click on it, you will have direct access to that. Like I was saying, there's a Dropbox links also where you will find present document that I'm using for this workshop. And there will probably be other documents that will be added as we go along. Now, while those directives were not included in the Urantia book, does not in any way diminish their value or common sense and should be used with discernment. So, you know, they cannot be used dogmatically. We have to be careful how we interpret those directives. And I had this quote from Jesus saying, "First, this generation is best that we live these truths while we shun the making of records," said Jesus to his apostle. You should remember Jesus, while he was teaching his apostle, asked them not to write anything down. And there was a good value to that, which I always ask myself, why would he do this? You know, why Jesus didn't want anyone to write down what he was saying at that time? And that came to my mind one day. I was thinking, what if the Urantia book would disappear tomorrow? What would be left of the Urantia book in the long run? And after asking that question to a few readers and exploring this issue within a study group session, we came to the conclusion what would be left would probably be what we live of those teachings, what we have integrated into our life. So this is why I chose this passage from the Urantia book. So the first period is 1 hour. I will ask someone from you to read the publication mandate, which I will be putting up on the screen. And then I will use quotes from the publication mandate. And then we will come back to this document. So I'm going to start by sharing with you the publication mandate. I think I will have to leave I don't know if we can share more than one document, but I will have to, just a second. I'm going to go to the publication mandate. Here it is. So I guess everyone can see the publication mandate. So is there any one of you, if you raise your hand, I will see you on the screen, that would want to read that document? Okay, Joy raised her hand. So you want to start reading, and I'll move the document as you move along with the reading.
Okay, let me get my little pictures out of the way here. Not sure how to do that, but anyway. Okay. The timing of the Urantia book, starting there.
Well, yeah, you can start at the top to see what it was.
Compiled by certain members of General Council of Urantia Brotherhood for the files of Executive Committee of Urantia Brotherhood, presented April 4th, 1955. It seems appropriate a second time to bring to the attention of the Executive Committee certain wise comments and advices which have been gathered over a period of years and which pertain to the future problems of the Urantia book. These advices could well be presented under the general caption, "The timing of the Urantia book," generally designated as the publication mandate. We regard the Urantia book as a feature of the progressive evolution of human society. It is not germane to the spectacular episodes of epical revolution, even though it may apparently be timed to appear in the wake of one such revolution in human society. The book belongs to the era immediately to follow the conclusion of the present ideological struggle. That will be the day when men will be willing to seek truth and righteousness. When the chaos of the present confusion has passed, it will be more readily possible to formulate the cosmos of a new and improved era of human relationships. And it is for this better order of affairs on earth that the book has been made ready. But the publication of the book has not been postponed to that possibly somewhat remote date. An early publication of the book has been provided so that it may be in hand for the training of leaders and teachers. Its presence is also required to engage the attention of persons of means who may be thus led to provide funds for translations into other languages. You who have dedicated your lives to the service of the book and the Brotherhood can little realize the import of your doings. You will doubtless live and die without fully realizing that you are participating in the birth of a new age of religion on this world. The future is not open to your mortal comprehension, but you will do well to diligently study the order, plan, and methods of progression as they were enacted in the earth life of Michael when the Word was made flesh. You are becoming actors in an ensuing episode when the Word is made book. Great is the difference in these dispensations of religion, but many are the lessons which can be learned from a study of the former age. You must again study the times of Jesus on earth. You must carefully, when you move it like that, I have to move my pictures too, or of all of us. I don't know how to close it. Let me see. Oh,
Joy,
where was it? Yeah?
there is a minus symbol clear up at the top right. That you click that minus.
Oh, that did it. Okay, thanks. Okay, where am I? You must again study the times of Jesus on earth. You must carefully take note of how the kingdom of heaven was inaugurated in the world. Did it evolve slowly and unfold naturally, or did it come with sudden show of force and with spectacular exhibition of power? Was it evolutionary or revolutionary? You must learn to possess your souls in patience. You are in association with a revelation of truth, which is a part of the natural evolution of religion on this world. Over rapid growth would be suicidal. The book is being given to those who are ready for it long before the day of its worldwide mission. Thousands of study groups must be brought into existence, and the book must be translated into many tongues. Thus will the book be in readiness when the battle for man's liberty is finally won and the world is once more made safe for the religion of Jesus and the freedom of mankind. In the history of the Urantia movement, Dr. William S. Sadler, by Dr. William S. Sadler, this message is titled The Publication Mandate. This paper was presented by William S. Sadler, Jr. to the forum on the above date. For public consumption, the pronouns were modified. For example, we instead of you. For this purpose, we have changed them back to the original. Copies of this paper were inserted into the Secretary's notebook.
That's it.
Oh, okay. No period.
Thank you very much, Joy.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if many of you have read this document before, but for me, it was a guiding document throughout all these years that I was involved with the Urantia movement. And more involved, like I read that document first in 2003 when I went to Chicago and was presented at the foundation. And I've used it since then. But even before I read the document, for some reason, I knew some of those directives. I don't know where I got them, maybe from reading the history of the movement. And they've been guiding me in formulating strategic plans and getting study group ready, and up and running, and ideas about the training of leaders and teachers. And I guess some of those directives found their way into the charter of some association or the purpose. Even in the DOT, you can find part of it. So they are very important. So I'm going to go back to sharing another document. So, well, you can see the link has already been posted to that document on the Vimeo. If you look at the chat, and you can at any time copy this link to wherever you want. So I'm going to go back to my first document. Just a second. I'm going to share my first document. We are what we teach. Okay. Now I've retained some of the quotes from this document, and which I would like for you to, here I can blow it up. I didn't know I could do that while I share my screen. So I'm going to read those quotes and one by one, and I will ask you as a comments and question, how do these quotes resonate with you? Do you find wisdom in them? So you're free to share with the rest of the group what do you think about these things. What were the methods Jesus used to teach? You have some example. And he was a kind of man. Well, we're going to go back to that. So let's go by the first. But the publication of the book has not been postponed to that possibly somewhat remote date. An early publication of the book has been provided so that it may be in the end for training of leaders and teachers. But you will do well to diligently study the order, plan, and methods of progression as they were enacted in the earth life of Michael when the word was made flesh. You must again study the time of Jesus on earth you must carefully take note of how the kingdom of heaven was inaugurated in the world. And then lastly, the book is being given to those who are ready for it, long before the day of its worldwide mission. Thousands of study groups must be brought into existence. So anyone care to share their thought on these quotes or comment? What do you think about them? How do they relate to how you see the Urantia book today? How it relates to your engagement, to whatever you're doing, whether it's in the organization you're part of, or in the study groups, or in your daily life? How it relates to this thing that we have, about training leaders and teachers. Does it resonate with you?
Well, I guess the thing that strikes me is just that there seems to be a hoped-for methodology with which we would progress with spreading the Urantia book, that it's not just something that you go out and proclaim. It's something that you have to take thought with as a method for spreading it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Gaetan, this is Mark. You do well to study the methods of Jesus was something that I think caused a sea change in my own thinking. We all want to go out there and we want to share the book, and we get kind of reckless and maybe even careless. But now we're being told to study the methods that Jesus used, and that sort is humbling. And so the study group in Alabama, the group decided to personally try to answer the question, what does it really mean for me to follow Jesus? So that instruction from the mandate really rings well for all of us if we really want to follow Jesus. We can't be reckless about this. I'm done.
Thank you, Mark.
And I don't know, how do you raise your hand?
Well, you can raise your hand on screen. I will see you. But Joy raised her hand already, so go ahead, Joyce.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just trying to understand how to...
Okay, yeah, because Patrick, we don't see your picture, so you could raise your hand by the participant screen. While it opens, you can see every participant, and then from there you can, it says at the bottom, raise your hand, and then we can see.
For me, I didn't realize that this was written back like in '55 by the General Council members, and it sort of explains maybe why the Urantia book hasn't caught on. You kind of expect almost everyone you talk to immediately turn on to the Urantia book. And so it sort of explains that, well, the world's not ready for it yet, and it sounds like it's going to be a really long time before it is. It called it one of the quotes, the remote future or something. It used the word remote. And so for me, that's a bit of an explanation as to why there's not already millions of people reading and studying the Urantia book.
Thank you. Well, when I talked with Carolyn Kendall about when was this written, in fact, those directive was written when the book was coming along after 1934, between 1984 and 1955. This is when they had further contact. And in the video, I think she does explain this. So it was not written by the council member, it was given directive to the contact commission all throughout the time that the book was coming through, I think. So you will have more story of it when you look at the video. Okay, Paul, you had to raise your hand.
Yes, I did. In looking at how Jesus went about introducing, and I'm talking about from the moment he said the hour has arrived, and how he organized his mission to deliver an epical revelation to the world. And what he did is he went out first and selected the leaders, 6 of them. Then he allowed those he selected to go out and select one more each. Now, that method can only be done with leadership that has really powerful spiritual insights, because the outlooks and opinions of all of those apostles were different. The Revelation spent much of its short 2,000 pages focused upon the lives of those first 12 men. Those 12 men brought Christianity into the world, and which is one of the best religions of the mind. And remember that revelations must keep step with the evolutionary religions of the races. So the leadership of this revelation must understand tolerance for the outlooks and opinions and personal experience of all those who compose that leadership group. And there will be diverse peoples. For example, David Zebedee, in my opinion, was every bit as much of an apostle as those 12 men. And so was John Mark. Just because he wasn't ordained personally by the master, but the reasons for that are within the book. But these men were wholeheartedly devoted to following after the master. That makes them his agents and his representatives. So too were the 12 female administrators. And the reason he couldn't ordain those women was because they would be tormented and pursued from the moment that he did. He knew that he could not make that adjustment at that particular point in time. But with the revelation material and the disclosure of the lives of these individuals that formed the first leadership group, and the information they have revealed about their personal nature, their attitudes towards the master, is extremely important information for anyone who wishes to become a leader, an agent and representative of our Creator Son, who is with each and every one of us, just as he was then, only without the material body. Now we must learn to speak directly to him the way he spoke to the Father. He made that possible. And so we should focus on developing workshops that focus on and taking one simple thing, for example, communion with the Master. Can he speak to us as a spirit of truth, as he spoke to the men of old, as a man in flesh, the same as them? And so for me, this is an extreme attempt, in that true spirit discernment has to be there. The fruit of the Spirit have to be evident in the lives of every single one who volunteers for service as an agent and representative of the Master. And we can interview individuals seeking leadership positions to find out if their lives have been, from early childhood, a bestowal of the fruits of the Spirit as the Master described them. And so anyway, that issue with me is very, very powerful, in the sense that I know for a fact that there are many people who are actually representatives of the Master, and not all of them are teaching religion. What we're a specialized group of teachers, such as the first 12 ambassadors, in that our duties and obligations are to bring forward an epical revelation to the world's population. But David Zebedee had a unique capacity to serve the Master and to facilitate the delivery of his mission on earth with large numbers of people at a time when there wasn't the kind of technologies of today to organize a camp of 5,000 people. Those were extremely difficult assignments, which he mastered on behalf of the master. And so the leaders and teachers will not all be spiritual teachers. Some of them will be masters at the advanced communication systems of today. Some will be masters at artistically representing new logans and slogans to bring forth the religion, the liberties of enlightened sonship that the master himself brought forth and demonstrated in his own personal lives. And so for me, I see the view of leaders and teachers has to be broad enough to encompass what the Revelation says. The work of God can be done in any human occupation, and that the Creator sons, as they appear in the worlds of space, have appeared in every occupation imaginable to man.
Okay, I'll have to move on to another. Thank you very much, Paul. Very accurate what you say. Would like to move on to a next comment by Gilles. Patrick?
Yeah,
go ahead.
So the two things that come to my mind, one is the fact that it's in preparation. It's kind of not for these days, just for preparing teachers, is the analogy of Adam and Eve. When they came on Earth, they came to seed, I mean, physically, to help biologically to enhance our gene pool. And they didn't do it right away. There was a process, and they had to wait and prepare and have enough sons and before really spring to the world. So it looks to me that we are kind of in this stage where, you know, we are grooming before it will later, who knows when, have a bigger impact on society. And the second comment would be along the line of what I think everybody thinks and has already stated, is the fact that it's not about the book itself. It's not about, you know, how many people read the book, or how many people we can get to read or introduce to the book, or here's the quote in the book that says this and that. It's about first learning it and integrating into our lives. And then once we live it, is to share it. That's the brotherhood. And as we share it and we instill the living truth in other people as we have learned them, and we keep on growing with, then over time, it will be like the children of and grandchildren of Adam and Eve. You have like a bigger and bigger family root that can go to the world. And and this is in that way that is one slow, but on the other hand, very, very deep and important. Well, that's all. That's the way I see it.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, go again, Tommy.
So much to add to that. I did my master's thesis on communication years ago because managed care had just come in, and as a therapist, I realized that my communication was going to have to be very quick. They weren't going to pay for what they used to. So I came up with different techniques for doing that. And so the way I look at it is whenever I meet someone, I try to discern which is their dominant sense. They'll either say, oh, I see what you're saying, which means their dominant sense is probably visual, or I hear what you're saying. And if you'll notice that, it's a technique that can be used, and salespeople use this on you all the time, if you'll pay attention. And all of a sudden they feel very familiar to you because they're coming from your dominant sense. There's a big difference between believers and those who have faith. And I've done several workshops on this. I mean, once you have faith, you will risk your life because you believe so strongly. There's a huge difference. I agree with who was just speaking, Patrick, in that we have to serve right where we are. And the Master told us on page 1726 in the old version that your life and what you're doing will bring believers to you. And he actually gives an equation in there that says if this flow of people ebbs, look at yourself. It's something within your life that has changed. It's not the people. It's you and the way your life is perceived by people. So I think it's important to learn the styles of learning of other people, understand their maturity level. Christ, 3 different times in the book, it says, he said, don't cast your pearls before swine. That just grated on me. The first time I heard it, I thought, oh, that's awful. How can you say that? How can you call some of your children swine? But I think what he was saying here is, don't try to offer this higher revelation to people who do not have the capacity to understand it yet. That doesn't mean we don't love them, we don't serve them. It just means that you're wasting your time to try to get them involved with this revelation. They're not ready. And I have experienced that many times, even in my own family. So that's just some of my understanding of what we're looking at. It's very intense, and I don't think the book itself is important. It is our lives and the changes that we can make with our own lives and with our service. Thanks.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you. Very appropriate. Anyone wants to comment on those questions that I put there concerning the quotes that are on the screen? Okay, may I direct you to one of them, which is the last one of the quotes, the last one. The book is being given to those who are ready for it long before the day of its worldwide mission. So do you think you are the people that are ready for it? You know, who are we to think that we're ready for it, you know? And if we're ready for it, what do we do with it? Like a little bit like Joy said, or, you know, faith, you know, whoever Tommy said about faith and belief. Sometimes we believe in something. Yeah, Gabrielle, I see your end. Sometimes we believe in something, but we don't have exactly the faith to go with it. And so it's very important that faith is exercised in that domain. So go ahead, Gabrielle.
Just to comment on what you just said, I think the fact that we are specifically the people here on the study group, but anybody else who has, quote unquote, found the Urantia book, which in my experience, most of the time, it finds you and not vice versa. Then for whatever reason, these people who are reading the book at whatever capacity they have, they are ready for it. So we cannot look for somebody else to do what is written in this mandate. This is us. We cannot look for somebody other generation, the younger generation, the future generations. No, this mandate is probably for several generations. It includes us, and whoever is reading this document and or the Urantia book has to look into themselves and ask themselves, why was I chosen for this? No, it doesn't mean I'm special, but it means I have something to do with this knowledge, with this revelation. Live it, share it, volunteer, act, think, contemplate, whatever. Wherever we are, whatever we're doing. But we cannot look for somebody else. We do have to take action in a wise way today and not wait for something or somebody else to do it.
Thank you, Gabrielle. And I remember when I read those and going around talking about the publication mandate and the next session that we're going to have, the next period of this session about the chapter 4 of paper 140. If it's not us, who then is those people that are ready? And that got me back to that parable of Jesus about the talent. We were given talent. What do we do with it? And it comes upon us that we all have to train ourselves as leaders or teachers. Not teachers as a common sense like we see in the community, because that might scare people, that teachers are the one that have a certificate claiming them as a teacher. But we can all be, through our own example and loyalty to those teaching, become good teacher in our life to our children, to our neighbor, to our co-worker, to our spouse, to anyone we meet. We always are a teacher to who we are. So it is very important. So who else wanted to say something?
There are two
Yes.
raising their hands. One is Mark Kurtz, and the other is Paul.
And then there's Sandra, who rose her hand.
Sandra.
Okay, Mark, go ahead. Then Sandra. And who else did you say, Janie?
Paul.
Paul, okay.
Okay, I was just listening to Paul Kemp, and he was right, I believe, that Jesus selected people who he felt were ready. And then there's the next step he took, answering your question, what were the methods Jesus used to teach? He took time to train them. And James C. Mills is a former trustee of the foundation, now deceased, once used to tell people, go and get yourself a really good book on the world's religions. So James was saying the same thing, training. And so I feel very inadequate, but I feel like, to answer your question, we have to train ourselves to be knowledgeable, to be better teachers. I'm done.
Thank you. Then Sandra?
I think that there's a few things that were told that I think in my own experience has been very helpful about how to really expand or the teachings of the book. I think that the one point is to really experience or to put it into your daily life is one point that I think is very important. And if you don't do that, there is no validity in what you are talking of, or whoever you are talking about that. The other thing, I don't think that is necessarily that we have to talk about the book to spread the teachings of the book. And I think that it's very important. I have experience in my own life, in my line of work. I think also that's a point that everybody, whatever they do, they can really apply the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of the Urantia Book in their own line of work. And that's also very important because, I mean, there's, as you say, that you don't have to be a teacher to teach about this book. And yeah, and I think that's the point. I think that also if we are prepared, I mean, the book came to us and we have been, I think that there is a progress about this book that sometimes it starts, but you reading the book and intellectualizing the book, and at some point you study the book and well, at least it was my experience, and then there comes the time that you are experiencing it and put it into your daily life. And that's, for me, was the turning point that many people realized that I could really be with this example, could spread this teaching in many kind of ways. So I think that's the point, and that's also what if you see that it was given to the people beyond the time, or I mean before the time, is because we need to be the example by living these experiences day by day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Paul, you want to say something?
Yeah, just let me turn my audio on here. If you could, is there a way of putting a full screen on speakers so that we can learn to know and love each other? The gentleman, I don't know his name, that mentioned the need to study other religions, I think is a superlative comment. And that is absolutely necessary for those who will be exclusively devoted to taking the oath of an ambassador, of an apostle of Christ. When he conducted that ceremony, that was a formal ceremony in which he ordained them to go out and become the light of the world. And he said, to you and your successors who hear this charge. In other words, he was, and the revelation has given us the ceremony that introduces us into a life as a human teacher of truth, under the guidance of the conjoined spirit of the Master and his Father. And so I think that we should consider that as a prerequisite. Now, there wasn't any specific, what Jesus did is simply organized, right? But that ceremony was a fixation of a point of entry into a new career. And I am sure that the Master will, matter of fact, I know for a fact and with a certainty, will be with each and every one of his apostles living today, or ambassadors of the Father, as he was with those 12, only all at the same time, and exclusively devoted to the mind training and the spiritual insights necessary to deal with such a complex situation as we face on Urantia regarding religions. In his time, he said the scriptures were just recently put together. But he admonished his apostles on many times if they were unaware of the truth postulates of those scriptures that shaped and formed the religious minds of those who followed them. And remember that all of the organized religions of the races are the religion of the mind. They are not the religion that the ambassadors of Christ are going to be teaching. Their religion is a spontaneous manifestation of a person living on this world in step with the spiritual upliftment of the planet. And so I would like to participate in gathering together some of the simple truths. And I think that Gaetan Jesus gave us the actual example, and they put that in the book. And so we have a record of, especially the olden religions, the ones before Jesus' time. We have an excellent summary, very, very simplistic, that forms the basis of that understanding of other world religions. And so now all we have to do is look at the religions that came into existence after the times of Christ, and then formulate again a simple framework of what was best in those religions. And the Revelation tells us, instead of condemning what's wrong with other people's religion, look for what is good and true in each of those religions.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
So,
and
you.
that could refer back to when Jesus traveled with Gaetan and his father Gaetan, and they went to Alexandria Library, where Jesus took every religion that was in existence at the time and took from those crypt that was there, those books, took everything that was good. And I guess the example of Jesus' life in the Urantia book is a good example of that, of finding truth wherever it is. And I think this is what's important. It's not the book itself that's so important, is what it contains as truth and an example for us to lead us on a journey of discovery. The book doesn't tell everything. It tells us most essential question we had when we found it. And I think we need to keep on looking for those answers, whether they come within us as revelation, personal revelation, or they come through other people as we listen to them. There's truth everywhere around us, and truth is relative. So, Rick Lyon,
Kingdom of Heaven introduced, and I've been involved with discussions about this before, and there's two ways the Kingdom of Heaven can be and has been introduced. One is the slow and quiet person-to-person method, and then the coming in power and glory type thing. But it seemed to me that Jesus a lot of times introduced his teachings quietly and gently to people who were first being introduced to it, or who were new to what he was trying to teach. And then, then he did perform miracles, so introduced what he was trying to teach in a more powerful way. So, with the Pharisees, he refused to perform miracles in front of them. And often I've wondered, well, why did he do that? And then, but yet I read here recently about, the resurrection of Lazarus, and he did that in front of people, not because he was trying to make them believe, but because they were already believers. So I think that tells us often what method we should use to introduce these teachings and this revelation, depending on who we're talking to. If it's someone new, then we should maybe use his method of, quietly and gently just asking questions, trying to lead them to the teachings. But when we're gathered together with ourselves here, we can be more bold in what we're discussing or revealing. So I think that's a lesson for us there from the publication mandate about how we can use the two different ways of introducing the kingdom of heaven and the Urantia Book to people. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Now there are some people who didn't voice their comments. So yes, Alice, go ahead. You're mute. Okay.
Yep. So yes, I was thinking about the distinction between the two teaching methods of going out and, teaching to a large group in a formal manner versus just letting people see how you live your life and they will learn to live it in a similar way. And I feel like where I'm at in my life, I'm at more of a place where I'm in a position to go with that second method, that quieter method. But then the one problem that I am faced with is that it's hard to live your life sort of as an open book. Jesus, it seems, was very good at getting people into deeper conversations. And I think for a lot of people, we just kind of get stuck on small talk or just the logistics of our lives when we have conversations with people. And so just for myself, what I'm trying to improve is getting people into deeper conversations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I guess it's a problem that many of us meet, is that we're trying to engage in deep conversation with people we meet, and how we go about that now. And I remember one thing that when Jesus went about to his tour to Rome, that sometimes he would have a meeting with people more than 10 times, person-to-person meeting, before he would introduce maybe a truth to them. And for me, I've been defaulting this method many times. Like I meet someone, and as soon as they show a little bit of interest, sometimes we give them too much, and we burn them because they were not ready to get everything that we know. So we need to take our own souls and patience when we want to share those truths. So and every one of us is different. Some people are better at it than others. There's some people that can engage people very easily and go right in, and they have this ability that others lack, and we have to learn those abilities. And I guess what you're saying, Alice, is right. We need to find ways that we can improve ourselves in getting there with people that we meet, and how to achieve that heart-to-heart conversation where people will open up. And before we open up, we have to be careful how we open up to people. We might scare people, even every day I try that when I meet people, and I try to find ways to open them up. And if I open myself too much, well, they might be scared of who I am, because so many prejudices today about religion and sect. And what traveling around has given me is a better understanding of culture. I found that in some countries in South America, it's as not easy as to talk about God as there is in other countries of the same continent. In Canada, we're very different, and in Quebec, very different than the rest of Canada or some part of the US, where talking about Jesus is very open. Here, people talk about Jesus will be named like a Jesus freak. So we have to be careful how we go about it. We're at the end of our session. I'm going to start it. I mean, not the session, but I mean the period of this session. I'm going to go into the second session. But before I go on to this section, I just want to tell you that I put in the Dropbox folder a document that was written by Vern Grimsley. It might not be up to date because it's the English version. I updated the French version. It's called 111 Ways to Share Spiritual Truth in the Urantia Book. And you might glean from those, idea that Vern published many years ago, some value in them, some wisdom in how we share the Urantia Book, how we share the teaching for commoners, for people like us maybe, learn to become better teachers. And from what I learned from Vern Grimsley and what came to me from my own thought is that sometimes how do we share truth? I was always thinking, what makes people receptive to talk about a certain subject? And that same subject, 3 months later, you can talk about it. And most people are affected by what the news is saying. So if they talk about the news says about abortion or about anything that's moral, has moral value, people are open for these talks. And as Urantia Book reader, we can use those opportunities to tell other people what should be the real value in what is expressed there in that common thing happening. And we had this gentleman in Quebec there that for many years, an old guy, was the reader of the Urantia Book, and he would write in the newspaper every time an article would appear that had certain moral value, he would write his own opinion without ever saying the source was the Urantia Book. And he did it year after year after year, time again. That's all he was doing. And then as it went along, newspaper would start calling on him to write articles. But he never said that he was coming from the Urantia Book community. And then he went so far as he was invited on a TV show, where he would express his own idea. And the only thing he was doing was sharing those truths, just like Vern Grimsley was for many years, without ever saying that they came from the Urantia Book. So it made me think, what is so important? Is it the book itself or the truth that we can share? And so we have to prepare the world a long time in advance. So we have to seed, like Jesus did when he went around Rome. We have to put those seeds in the mind of people that they expand for them to be ready when the next generation comes in. I think this is how truth progresses in our own society. And when I asked this old gentleman if he would write his stories to be shared in one of our publications, as an example, he refused. He didn't want other people to find out, of his community, where he came from. He didn't want to, and I agree with him, And I think there are many other people like this, silently sharing those truths without being part of our own community. And they're doing great work. So thank you for this first. Yes, Sandra, you want to say something?
I just wanted to comment that sometimes the first step to really connect with people is listen to them. Sometimes, when you listen to people and you realize what interests the people, you can make a connection through this interest from the people, and then you can build up this point by sharing and amplifying, your opinion and so on. So sometimes it's not about talking, but about listening and be really a listener. Sometimes people really need to be listened.
Mm-hmm.
Very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, we do need to listen. And which sometimes we have a hard time doing, We want so much to share what we know that we forget to listen. Thank you. Anyone else before we move to the next period? Yes, Tommy?
Just real quick, this is such an interesting conversation. And you brought up the fact about chosen people being special. I think we have to be so careful about that as Urantia Book readers, because we are not chosen. We are not special. We are no different from anyone else. And that is the arena where we need to relate to. Is, you know, I'm your brother. I'm right here. We live lives right next door to each other or right across the street. And Alice was talking about, I don't know how to go out to people. That quote I talked about on page 1726 in the older version, people will be drawn to you, is what that equation in that says. So if you are living your life right and you're putting yourself out there and serving, it will draw people to you. And you will know, if you'll stop and just listen very quietly, whether they need the book or whether there's some other truth that you have to give them. But there's some reason they've been brought into your life, and you'll know that. I wanted to share with you all a little bit about, because my daughter is so involved in this, what the young people are doing. You know, I don't think it's a fluke that the internet, computers, all of that happened very shortly after the publication of this book. I think the powers that be saw the progression that was going to happen. And the young people that are involved with the book right now are getting on there big time and doing wonderful things. I got to meet a lot of them at this conference in Denver, and they are just on fire, which is exciting to me because for quite a while we didn't have many young people. So I just wanted to let you all know about that. It's very exciting. Thanks.
Thank you, Tommy. Just want to make a rectification. It doesn't say in the mandate that we're special or chosen. It just say we're ready for it. And that's quite the difference. I understand what Tommy's saying because remember when we talked about this directive and I explicitly said to people, doesn't mean we're chosen. Doesn't mean that we are special about it. We're the one that chose this book through our own research. We're the one that came to it. And for me, realizing this, it is more important today when I meet a Urantia Book reader to ask them how they found the book and for how many years have they been reading it. Because how they found the Urantia Book tells more about them and who they are than how many years or how long did it take them to read the book. So thank you. Now we're going to pass to the second part of this. I'm going to have someone to read. Just a second, if I can find the document.
Gaetan?
Yes, Jeannie?
I think Gilles wants to say something.
Okay, I haven't seen. Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, just I wanted to echo, I think, who was it, Sandra? Is that right? Did I get it right? Who was saying about first listening people. I mean, that's listening is, you know, when we are talking about the revelation, we are talking about disseminating, we are talking about putting the information out there. But we not often hear about, you know, hearing, listening to people, because ultimately we relate to people not by telling them something, but by listening to them. And by listening and understanding where they are, we can, if we make the effort, understand where they are. And as a result, if we are to be good teachers, we need to understand what is the next little things for them that can help them. And then that's, you know, if we want to have if you want to be powerful in terms of helping them, is we need to find that and how to tactfully tell them or help them to realize something that they are about to realize. We are just catalysts. So I think it's very, very important. That's personally what I use a lot. The first listening before talking. And then well, I guess that's all. I wanted to say something else, but I forgot.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again. I'm gonna try to share a link with you on the chat, but I'll have to do that later. Okay, okay, paper 140. That's not it. Sorry about that. I got the wrong paper. Where is it? Where? Paper 140. For some reason, I cannot I cannot share the paper that I want to share with you. But I need to find it a second. It is there, but for some reason it doesn't permits me to share it. And I don't understand why. Can I choose to do? No, just one. I'll try again. Ah, here it is. So I would like for someone, if it is possible, to read that chapter of, just a second, I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. So you see more of it.
That's a little too big.
Is it?
Yeah, there you go, right there.
You want me to, how's that?
Good.
Is there any volunteers that want to raise their hand? Okay, Tommy, you want to read this, please?
Do you just want me to read what's in yellow?
No, the whole thing there.
The whole thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then we'll go back to the quotes.
Okay. Section 4, you are the salt of the earth. The so-called Sermon on the Mount is not the gospel of Jesus. It does contain much helpful instruction, but it was Jesus's ordination charge to the 12 apostles. It was the Master's personal commission to those who were to go on preaching the gospel and aspiring to represent him in the world of men, even as he was so eloquently and perfectly representative of his Father. You are the salt of the earth, salt with the saving savor. But if this salt has lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is henceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and trodden under the foot of men. In Jesus' time, salt was precious. It was even used for money. The modern word salary is derived from salt. Salt not only flavors food, but it is also a preservative. It makes other things more tasty, and thus it serves by being spent. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and be led to glorify your Father who is in heaven. While light dispels darkness, it can also be so blinding as to confuse and frustrate. We are admonished to let our light so shine that our fellows will be guided into new and godly paths of enhanced living. Our light should so shine as not to attract attention to self. Even one's vocation can be utilized as an effective reflector for the dissemination of this light of life. Strong characters are not derived from not doing wrong, but rather from actually doing right. Unselfishness is the badge of human greatness. The highest levels of self-realization are attained by worship and service. The happy and effective person is motivated, not by fear of wrongdoing, but by love of right doing. By their fruits you shall know them. Personality is basically changeless. That which changes, grows, is the moral character. The major error of modern religions is negativism. The tree which bears no fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Moral worth cannot be derived from mere repression, obeying the injunction, thou shalt not. Fear and shame are unworthy motivations for religious living. Religion is valid only when it reveals the fatherhood of God and enhances the brotherhood of men. An effective philosophy of living is formed by a combination of cosmic insight and the total of one's emotional reactions to the social and economic environment. Remember, while inherited urges cannot be fundamentally modified, emotional responses to such urges can be changed. Therefore, the moral nature can be modified. Character can be improved. In the strong character, emotional responses are integrated and coordinated. and thus has produced a unified personality. Deficient unification weakens the moral nature and engenders unhappiness. Without a worthy goal, life becomes aimless and unprofitable, and much unhappiness results. Jesus' discourse at the ordination of the 12 constitutes a master philosophy of life. Jesus exhorted his followers to exercise experiential faith. He admonished them not to depend on mere intellectual assent, credulity, and established authority. Education should be a technique of learning, discovering the better methods of gratifying our natural and inherited urges, and happiness is the resulting total of these enhanced techniques of emotional satisfactions. Happiness is little dependent on environment, though pleasing surroundings may greatly contribute thereto. Every mortal really craves to be a complete person, to be perfect, even as the Father in heaven is perfect. And such attainment is possible because in the last analysis, the universe is truly fatherly.
Thank you, Tommy. Now, that is a chapter that has inspired me for many, many years, still inspired me, when we look at what we need to have. And like a little bit like Paul was saying before, Jesus at the ordination, he ordained his apostle, and we can be ordained by ourselves. I don't believe that in the Urantia Book community we can ordain anyone. I think we have to choose our own way, and through our living faith, we can become those apostles of Jesus. And this chapter 4 is very strong because it gives us some clear insights of what there's need. So I'm going to share with you the screen again with some questions about those quotes that I chose. And of course, I could have chosen the whole chapter. The whole chapter is quite, here it is. No, it seems for some, oh, here it is. I don't know why I had many more documents on the screen. Maybe because I should have. Okay. It should last 1 hour. We're already into that period. So here are the quotes that I've chosen. You are the salt of the earth, salt for the saving savor. You are the light of the world. And I'm just reading the beginning of those quotes. You can read them as they are there. While the light dispels darkness, it can also be so blinding as to confuse and frustrate. An effective philosophy of living is formed by a combination of cosmic insight and the total of one's emotional reaction to the social and economic environment. Strong character are not derived from not doing wrong, but rather from actually doing right. By their fruits you shall know them. Education should be a technique of learning, discovering the better method of gratifying our natural and inherited urge, and happiness the resulting total of these enhanced techniques of emotional satisfaction. I'm going to shrink a little bit. When I chose chapter 4, for me, some of them related to the publication mandate and like training of leaders and teachers, their relationship, because Jesus ordained as apostle and he wanted them to become teachers. But did they all become leaders? That's another question. How did those quotes relate to become and to be a better teacher? That's the question. How do we acquire the fruit of the Spirit? Paul Kemp addressed this issue a little while ago, and even Tommy, I think, addressed this issue when she talked about belief and faith. What paper of the life of Jesus exemplifies a philosophy of living for us? And we might have looked at different papers in the book that have impressed us, and I would like for you to share, and I would invite those people that haven't talked yet to express themselves. And to see when you express yourself that you express something that you have lived, something experiential, like they call us to do, like Jesus called his apostle to do, experiential faith. something that you had an experience. But try to have your comments short enough so to let other people have time to express their own thought. So we're open. So anyone wants to say something, lift your hand. Yes, Janie?
I would like to say regarding, it was mentioned here, the ordination of messengers or something like that, right? In my view, as I understand the teachings in Urantia Book, there is no need for external ordination. No human being in the earth today can send spiritual messengers, because it is the Father is himself and the Spirit of truth who sent the messengers. And in my understanding, this means that we must be prepared in spirit like Jesus prepared himself in spirit, not only in knowledge of the revelation. And this experiential faith, we know through the Urantia Book that faith is a gift from the Father. So experiential faith is born from our inner experience with the Father. And say the Master also that when someone wants to serve his teachings, he said, my spirit will go before you, or something like that. Is the spirit, this is something that Tommy mentioned, and in his answer to Alice, how can we contact other people? And they are attracted to us by our spiritual fruits, by our love. This is a work of love in our lives. This is the love of the Father active in our lives that guide us. It's the Father himself and the Spirit of truth who guide us, and also those who are open, those who like these things, feel this attraction, because we are not alone working or serving in this task. It's the Father within ourselves and within the other people who do the work. So I think to understand and to live the teachings is absolutely basic, but our understanding is experiential. It's a guidance from the Father. It's not something just intellectual. We need an integration, a life. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Very well said. Experiential living. And for that purpose, myself, I wanted to learn more about this, how to become more attractive, like Paul said so before, how to become those attractive person. And you said something about love. And love, when it goes through us, it changes us. But love has to be given. It has to be manifested in service. And we have to pray to be in service to others and to our own community, where we can share this light. We can be that light that people look up to. And it's true service to our brother and sister that we shine wherever we can shine. So thank you for sharing that. And maybe some people can share their own experience. Yes, Joy?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that in my own personal experience, what is most inspirational to me, because, a lot of times you go throughout the week or whatever, and you don't really think about these things. But I find that when I am actually reading the Urantia book on a regular basis, especially like daily, and reading it, for a good chunk of time, at least, half an hour or something a day, that's what really inspires me and fills me with the desire to want to seek to do the Father's will and want to be living more this experiential faith. And it increases my faith. And I have a study group that meets once a week that it actually meets at my house, and But but just going to a once-a-week study group doesn't really do that for me. I mean, it keeps me in touch with God, but what I have discovered is really, if I'm continually reading the Urantia book, that's what really inspires me. And I think that's why probably most of us, when we first found the Urantia book, we were reading it, you know, like every day, right? And we were maybe reading it for an hour a day or a paper a day. We were just gobbling it up, and we were on fire with the Urantia book. And then over the years, you know, we've slowed down on that. And anyway, so for me, that's kind of what does it for me, is when I spend time reading the book and then also kind of in prayer and meditation as I read the book.
Thank you, Joy. Yeah, that does it for a lot of people. You know, every time I read the Urantia book, I'm always on fire after I read papers. So, and there might be other people that find other means of doing so. Like every day I meditate. I find through meditation a connection. And this is part of my own living experience. But there are others, so I'd like to hear more from other people. So who wants to go next? Yes, Joy. Tommy?
Just a little bit in line with what you said. We've just moved to this area, and so I'm still trying to get to know people here. And we have a thing online called Neighborhood, and a lot of people post there. Well, a girl posted just this morning she's going to start having a group meet at her house on meditation. What a perfect opening.
It is.
That's perfect. I will get to know other people who have similar interests to me, and we can all share. What a wonderful opportunity. So, and just like I said earlier, you never know where these things are. The angels are hard at work all the time. I have absolutely no doubt. Sometimes the acrobatics I think they have to go through to supply the physical things that happen in order for you to participate and meet who they want you to meet is amazing to me. But I take them exactly as they are, and when it's presented to me, I go, awesome. I'm going.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Maybe some of you can start that, you know, in your own neighborhood, a meditation group, you know, where you can introduce people to a certain technique, like how did Jesus meditate? And there was a paper written many years ago by, was published in the Messenger, and I think was Peter Hawley, who wrote the article about Jesus, how he was meditating. And we could introduce people to this form of meditation that Jesus used. And meditation, as you know, the definition of the word change in, I think, was 1985 in the dictionary to reflect more the Oriental type of meditation. But Jesus did not meditate that way, meditated another way. And Peter Hawley, in his article, really explained that, taken from the Urantia book. How did Jesus meditate? That's one way of doing it. Yes, Jenny?
I think when we speak about meditation, we should include worship, inner silent communion with the Father, be receptive. This is, to me, in my experience, very important to grow in spirit, to receive divine energies, spiritual fruits, divine values. This communion with the Father, which I try to have daily, is so changing, so enlightening, so beautiful. I have changed so much during the years. So I think we should study and practice this worshipful communion, like the Masters so much talk to his disciples and apostles and everyone. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. That reminds me that I will share that document and that folder. I will put it there so you can have access to this article by Peter Hawley. Who wrote? Oh, yes, Sandra.
I wanted to underline what Jeannie said about worshiping. I think that's a very, very important thing to do in a daily basis, this communion with the Father. The other thing that I realize also that sometimes we are not aware of is that when we have sometimes this kind of revelation or aha, moments in our life, sometimes if we don't watch ourselves, and it has been also in my case many times, the ego in me goes up. And sometimes this is something that other people feel, even if you are not aware of. So to approach people with this kind of ego out, with this kind of feeling that I know more because I read or I have this kind of experience, sometimes it can bring some bad feelings, or you cannot get in touch with other people in the way it should be. So we have to be, in my opinion, also very aware of ourselves, how we approach people, of ourselves, watching because we all have, in my opinion, this ego part sometimes go and blows and goes big and kind of, and this kind of way that sometimes we take I'm above other people, because I know maybe a little bit, or I think I know more than others, and it's not like that. I mean, the approach to other people should be eye to eye. It should be on the same level. It should be as a sister, as a brother, and that sometimes that we forget this part, and being aware of ourselves. Every time we have this responsibility to do so, in my opinion.
Thank you. And I would add to this that worship and meditation as a humbling experience, when we connect to God, we finally say, wow, we're so much to learn yet, we're so small. And it helps us, accept that love that God is within us. And like the Urantia Book said at one time, they say there's two types of people, the people that know God and the people that don't know God. And to have that experience of God within oneself, to be conscious of his presence within oneself, that's a strong, strong experience. And that's really humbling, because then we can reflect on the others, that when we meet them, they all have what we have. And we need to maybe have their light start on fire or something. Okay, Mark, you had his hands up.
Yeah, I was just wanted to comment about the how, and I can relate pretty well to what Alice said. It's difficult, and we had this discussion in study group more than once. We all feel the same frustration that we're not doing good enough. Then one day we started reading about the question that Gaetan gave Jesus one day when he discovered he had so many friends among the youth. He could easily make friends, and the advice that Jesus gave Gaetan that one day was valuable. Be friendly to them. If you want friends, you got to be friendly. And then he says, be alert for something you can do for them they would want done. To me, that was kind of a sea change moment. Rather than approaching them with an evangelistic, my agenda given to you, you look for an agenda that they have inside themselves and what they're looking for. We're so weak at that, and I know I need a lot of help with developing that. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mark. Well, that's very insightful counseling, if I should say so. We tend to forget this, that we need to do something they would want us to do for them. Helping people should be one of our main goals sometimes. Yes, Jeannie?
I would like to read something that Paul just passed here in the chat. He said, Jesus introduced the most simplistic method of meditation. And now I would have just a little chat with my Father in heaven. The word in the book is little talk. And many times I reflected about this expression of Jesus when he was only 5 years old. And it's amazing how Jesus, he was just a little child, and he had this inner impulse to have a conversation with the Father. And I was thinking, what means to have a talk with someone? It means that we talk. After we talk with our friend, we listen his answer, right? This means to have a little talk or to have a talk with someone. At that little age, Jesus began to listen to the Father. And during his life as a teacher, he always insisted in that we should, after our prayers, remain in silent receptivity to listen the answer of the Father to our soul. This is the important thing in this aspect, I think. This is worship, to be receptive, to be in inner silence, in inner communion with the Father. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. And that gives me another lesson, give us another lesson, that this example of Jesus talking to his Father, praying and meditating, and maybe there's something, well, at home with our grandchildren. One of Lynn's son has two daughters, and they don't teach them about religion. The mother doesn't believe in God, but the other son has 2 boys, and they believe in God. And when the children comes to our place, Lynn and I, sometimes we talk to them about talking to the Father, and talking to them. So I remember when I was young, I was taught about, to use prayer, all written down prayer. It was nothing, they were not encouraging us to formulate our own thought. Now, by what you're just saying that Jesus was doing is just to help us understand that we can teach kids how to pray, how to communicate with God, and that will enhance their own understanding of the spiritual value they have within themselves. And that's a great lesson from Jesus' life. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else that have an experience to share about their, are you the light of the world? Are you the salt of the earth? What do you think about those passages? Are we sometimes shining this light too strongly? Or are we not shining that light?
I think when I read that about being the light and so on, that's when I thought about really the ego, the proud. Be careful with, I think we are, and we have a responsibility about that in some kind of way, but we should really watch ourselves not to be really so bright that people say, oh, okay, with this person I don't want to have to do nothing with this person. And sometimes it happens many times without us being aware. And sometimes I watch and I see even in the Urantia movement a lot of people that are around like that, and they don't are aware of that. So I think that's very important to watch and work on ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Jeannie?
I think that means also to allow the Father do the work through us, but do not feel important personally, because we are not personally important. The important is the task that we are doing of service. But as the Master said, greatness in the kingdom is service. It's not personal importance. It is about to love and to allow the Father do his work through us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Alice?
I think that just getting to know people and finding ways to serve them is something that can really help to counteract the pride aspect of feeling like you are the light of the world. Just because I guess I have this image in my head of people who, I guess like ascetics maybe, who would spend hours and hours in meditation and feel like they are so much more holier than thou. But then they wouldn't really interact with people in a personal way. And I think that once you do get to know people and when you focus your attention on them, then it diverts all of the attention away from your pride and onto them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, there's maybe some ways we can use where we can bring down the importance that the ego has in our life. And I remember reading many years ago in the Urantia Book when Jesus said to his apostles, "Go minister to the sick and the needy." And I remember praying, I always wanted to help people. I wanted to be a missionary when I was young. So I was praying, how can I help people? You know, how can I help those sick and needy people? And what do you know? I got sick. I got really sick. And sick so much that I thought I would lose my mind. And through that episode of my life, like Tommy was saying, there was an opportunity that arose in my life. The doctor directed me to go to that support group. Well, I took meditation course, blah, 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 and I had read the Urantia Book, and I was questioning my faith, and I went to that support group. And for 15 years now, I've been helping that group of people. Every week I go to. They're people in needs, and by being with people that are truly at that level of need, you know, common, very basic needs, you know, they need to be well again. It brings me down to that level of humility, you know, by seeing people suffering. And I remember every time I go to that group, and within that group, I always pray, how can I help those people, Father? You take my hand, take my word, use them. How can I help those people? And, you know, I learned so much from that group, and still I'm learning, you know, I'm only learning a little, but I'm always trying to elevate their life. So I think service, well, the Urantia Book talks a lot about service. In any way we can serve the needy and the poor and the sick is one good way of keeping us humble in our life and learning from them how to serve the greater community. And I think as a Urantia Book reader, we should all have a little, you know, a project in our own personal life to be involved. Whatever, an hour a week or whatever, you know, or an hour is, you know, be a volunteer for an organization. That's where we can shine this light that's within us. And that light that's within us, I don't think it's a light that will blind. It's a light that who we are by giving this love to others. This is the light I think Jesus was talking about. Let's shine your light, this love that we have for other people. Not the light that I know better than you, but the light that I love you, that I want to do something for you. And I think this is what the light, and it can be given with that salt as a flavor. What people look at us, what do they see? What do they feel when they're around us? Do they see a good person, or do they see a person that's, oh, he knows it all? And we have to think of ourselves as, how do we reflect on others? What do they perceive in us? So, you know, I'm always thinking about these things because, you know, it's easy to become enamored with ourselves, to fall trapped to our ego. So we need to always be conscious of the fact that we're human and we have an ego, and we need to keep him in check to spiritualize it. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Anyone want to share something? Yes, Tommy.
Just briefly, right along in line with what you were saying, Gaetan, in the paper 48 on the Urantia life, it's section, boy, it's really long section. Section 6. back towards the back of that section under the ministering reserves, they talk about this. And they say, you will learn that you increase your burdens and decrease the likelihood of success by taking yourself too seriously. Nothing can take precedence over the work of your stratosphere, this world or the next. I mean, they very clearly tell us where to put our focus. They say it's very important to prepare for the next higher sphere, but nothing equals the importance of the work that you are doing here. And by work, they talk about the work is important, the self is not. And that's where we tend to get caught up. Just like, I forget who was saying it a while ago, but it's very important for us not to get important. It's not what we do and the fact that we do it. It's the fact that we are serving and that we're listening and letting the Father's love flow through us.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think that part of the book you're reading, I read it not long ago. I think it goes on to say a toad becomes a frog when it's very loyal to be a toad every day. That's a nice passage. Yeah, there are all kinds of things like this that we can read in the Urantia book that enhance our own living. Anyone wants to share another experience? What do you think about the fruit of the Spirit? When I read these things, oh, Samantha, how are you?
Hi, Sam.
When I read these quotes many years ago, and I was tempted to go back, maybe some of you have a preferred saying, something that really, really influenced your life. And I think this is how God talks to us. We see a nice quote somewhere, something, and we say, wow, that's nice. That tells somebody, that attracts us. And I think God is trying to, the adjuster within us, trying to reflect what we need. And I was attracted to certain saying, and one of them was written by a famous philosopher that lived in Renaissance period, I think, or 1700, which he says that for good to win, for evil to win is for good men to do nothing. And that really impressed me in my life. And I came to understand that all those things, they're jewel of wisdom that we need to acquire in our life. And I think the Urantia book is like this. I think the teaching of the Urantia book, while we say, oh, wow, that feels so good. Why does it feel good? It's because we need it, because we're hungry for it. And I think the Spirit talks to us through an urge to, a feeling of, wow, that's good, because those values, which are beauty, truth, and goodness, is what attracts us to become better. It's a sense of attraction. This is how I see that we can learn how to teach to people, show them something that attracts them, that they can use. Something nice, something good, and whatever it is, whichever way you do it. Anyone wants to say something? So maybe, yes, Jeannie, and then I'll go on to present you the next session. Yes. And what it's going to be about, and what you can do to prepare yourself for the next session. So, Jeannie, you want to say something before?
Just about this fruit of the Spirit. Yes, the word says fruit of the Spirit. The first thing that we need to be clear is to produce the fruit of the Spirit, said Jesus, we need to be born of the Spirit, because they are not fruits of our mind, or they are not human fruits, they are gifts from the Father. And the fruit of the Spirit, if you can use 2 words to define, they are divine love manifested through us. So we need to allow again the Spirit to do his transformation through the Spirit of truth, and receiving these divine fruits to share. No one can contain the fruits of the Spirit within. We need to express them because they are love. That's what you should. Thank you.
Thank you. And it went on to say, when I explored those things about what you just said about this fruit of the Spirit, they're expressions of love and transformation in our life. God, through the Spirit, is trying to transform us so we become like He is. And those values, that truth, beauty, and goodness, I use them all the time to try to teach to people certain value without ever talking about, they don't know about truth, beauty, and goodness, being very spiritual sometimes, but we can enhance their life by sharing those truths without always saying, oh, this is spiritual, this is religious. We can ask people to say, why do you think it's beautiful? Why do you think it's good? Why do you think it's true? And people will always say, yeah, that's a good question. We can ask questions and teach by asking questions. Now, I'm going to share my screen for the next session, and I will want Janie to take the link that I have for Vimeo and the link I have for Dropbox and post them into the chat room. So everybody, I will ask you if you want to, yes, Gabrielle, I'm going to come back to you in a second. If you want to share, to have access to those links, to watch that video, to have access to the document that I used for that first session, the document for the second session that will happen next week, copy that link that will appear in the chat room, copy it into a Word document or a note somewhere, because we have no other way of communicating with you to give you this access. We don't have exactly all your email, unless Janie would have. And then you can post it, or you can even ask Jeannie afterwards, write to her. I think you all have her email, and she would share with you those links. So this is one way of doing it. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, the next session. In this session, we'll explore in paper 159. Chapter 3, and paper 159, chapter 3 is about teachers and believers, which is another paper, chapter in a paper that really helped me. And the quality and lesson that are given by Jesus to become effective teacher, we will share with each other what are those quality and lessons that are inspiring us, and why do they do so for us. So it's very important that when we look at these things, we take them as personal experience that we can share. For me, the value of experience is very strong, because it talks to the heart. While it talks to the mind, it talks to the heart. Experience has something living in it. And while we share experience, they're easier to understand from another person's perspective, because they talk about the value, the real value. It's not just intellectual. We will also explore our service. Different kinds of service can enhance in us those qualities. So important to become better teachers. We need to explore what are those qualities that I need to acquire or to enhance within myself to become that teachers that I want to be. Task for the next session, read paper 159, chapter 3, instruction for teachers and believer, and select from this chapter qualities you would like to acquire or increase, and how would you do that? In what kind of way could you express or acquire those qualities, enhance those qualities? You will be asked to share what is for you the most important lesson that appealed to you in this chapter. And it's a very, very important chapter. I remember having it read during a certain meeting where we met to try to work with the Revelation, and we read this chapter and tried to impress our mind and edify ourselves with this. Now, to download the material for session 1 and 2 and additional training material, please follow this Dropbox link. That's the link that Jeannie will share with you. And I would say that if ever you have document that you would like to share with others, document that are from the Urantia Book, whatever, good document that could be used for educational purpose, please share those documents with Jeannie. We will post them somewhere to make them accessible to everyone, and we could put them in that folder. So what I will do, I will share that. You have the link, but it's not a shareable folder, so you cannot change anything in it. You can download whatever is in there, but you cannot change it or upload it. But I will give Jeannie access to upload those documents. So if she wants to upload anything to it, she'll be able to. We're trying to get another means of getting document out to you, which is a Microsoft Office program. It's called SharePoint. And I tried to set it up. It's an intranet service where we can put document and recording and videos and everything, but I haven't been able yet to figure it all out. So in this folder, you will find all that you need for the second session and also material used for the first session. So remember, there's this link, and there's also that link that Jeannie will share with you at the beginning, which is the Vimeo link, which is a video. And if you want to have access to more video on Vimeo, this video is under a folder which contains many other videos concerning the history of the Urantia Book movement and history of the book itself. So if ever you want other video, look on Vimeo, and they are just write down Urantia, and I'm pretty sure you'll have access to many more videos that concern the history of the Urantia movement. So, Gabriel, before we leave, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, about the timing of the meeting, in the Zoom invitation, it was mentioned that it's 12 p.m. Eastern Daily Time, and then there was a calculation that it's 7 p.m. Paris time, but I think that was not accurate.
It's wrong.
That's why Samantha came late.
Yeah,
and,
my mistake. Sorry.
And also soon the clock will change, so we really have to be careful with that. Another thing I wanted to say is that if you click on the chat button, you're able to save the chat, and so we can put all the links there, and then you can save the chat into your computer, and then it opens up as a text document. You can open it from Word or so the chat is savable.
So Samantha, before we go, you want to say something? You were supposed to come in. Was the hour different for you? You got mixed up with the hour?
Yeah, I should have calculated from her time, but I didn't. I thought it was good, so I do apologize for that, because I just, had 8 p.m. instead of 6.
Sorry.
But I'll look at the recording, because I really want to see what you guys did. So apologies again. I'll calculate myself next time.
Anyone want to say something before we go? Make sure that you go in the chat to copy those links before we close the meeting. And like Jenny said, it's been recorded.
Yeah, Gaetan, could you please paste here in the chat to me the address of the Dropbox?
It's in the document that I share with you, but now I will.
I could find it. I am looking, but
just a second. I'll try to share it with you. Maybe I can. The thing is, I don't know why I have problems sharing things in the chat. I never had this problem before. I'm gonna write something before.
Yeah, I got a question. It's one of the options in the bottom of the chat says more, and then this thing comes up that says save chat, but I don't know where it saves it. Do you have an idea?
Yeah. First of all, on my Mac, when you do save chat, a little window with green window comes, and then it says show in Finder, so you can click that and it will take you to the directory. Usually Zoom saves it somewhere under Zoom recordings, but it could be quite an obscure place.
Okay, thank you for that.
No, Jamie, for some reason I cannot share. I don't know why. I've been having this problem. So what I'll do, Jamie, I'll send you the document right away.
Okay.
To I'll send it to you to your email, your
Thank
regular email.
Yes.
Jenny Vasquez, that's education, Urantia, that's okay if I send
Yes.
it through that?
Yes, okay.
Okay, it's a Word document. Okay, just a second. Chat link. Okay. Okay, you should receive it in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there you can share it with the others. For some reason, I don't know why, I'm unable to share anything with the chat. I can't even write. When I write, it disappears. It doesn't appear. So something is happening.
Okay.
So
I have.
yeah, let's so you can use. It's at the end of the page.
Yes.
At the end of the document, you can.
I
share.
found it. I found it. Okay. Here it is. Thank you.
So you can copy that and have access, and then we'll put more document there as the session moves along. So I hope you enjoyed the session. That was enlightening for all of you, and I found it very interesting, all the comments that you posted. And this video will be available to everyone who wants to see it. Probably she'll post it on we can provide the link to YouTube on that same folder where Dropbox is, and Jeannie can probably share it. I don't know how she wants to share it, but these sessions are very important. We need to address the issue of training leaders and teachers, and more to the like of personal training ourselves. And for me, study groups have been a great way of doing this. I've been having study group for many years, and it has helped me understand the viewpoint of other people. And this is so important that, and they tell us in the publication mandate, we need to create thousands of study groups. And if the book is not ready yet for that era in which we live in, we need to disseminate the teaching in many ways, and study groups, I think, and learn about the Urantia book and its true value. So we need to be active at whatever we are. But like they said, a few years ago, I attended a seminar that the foundation organized by the foundation about media training. And the experts that were there, they told us, keep away from the media as long as you can. Because once they get notice of you, they will get what the bad thing, they'll try to say bad thing about you. So we have to be careful. So this is why study groups are so important. They're under the radar. We can do a lot, with study groups. We can influence a lot and make this truth, be disseminated into our own community. So I'm done. I leave it to Jeannie now.
Thank you, Gaetan. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. It was a pleasure to see you sharing the fraternity. God bless you. Have a nice week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.